Okay, so we are now live and looks like we are going to have folks start trickling in any moment. So if you are just joining us, welcome. Thank you so much for being here for part 2 of Health and Harmony's Climate Connection series, talking all about notes on Earth's interdependence and getting involved with climate as a youth, a young person. So we're going to give folks a few minutes. If you are joining, please drop your name in the chat along with where you're from and where you're joining us from and your favorite plant. Wouldn't be a Earth Month panel if we didn't do something like that. Okay. Going to give everybody just a couple minutes. Okay, we've got Channing from Tucson with the saguaro cactus. Very appropriate for the location. Okay. While we're letting folks come in, please drop your name, where you're from. We've got Jonathan talking about a tritium. I'm not sure what that plant is, but shouts out to our favorite plants during Earth Month, and welcome to the panel. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Trillium. Okay, there you go. Still not sure about that. We have geraniums, lavender plant, wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started by introducing myself. My name is Annalise Peterson, and I'm the Associate Manager of Institutional Partnerships for Health and Harmony. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of an intro to Health and Harmony in case this is your first time joining us. So Health and Harmony is an international nonprofit, and we work in the field of planetary health within the climate change space. And what that means is we don't look at rainforest loss or climate change and see those as isolated issues that must be addressed in silos. When we look at the planetary health, we address human health, biodiversity, economic challenges, education, and so many other interdependent factors that play a role in the protection of critical rainforests and ultimately the fight against climate change. I know what excited me the most about Health and Harmony when I first joined the staff is that we work directly with the experts in looking at climate as an interconnected, intersectional issue. And those are the indigenous and traditional communities who live in and around our world's rainforest. At Health and Harmony, we use a methodology that we call radical listening. We've spent 15 years working with rainforest communities to listen to their precise solutions, what they see as the main drivers of rainforest loss, and what they see as the solutions that can be utilized to fight climate change, which unsurprisingly are often intersectional solutions that are not found in traditional Western climate spaces. Things like access to healthcare, creating alternative livelihoods to help somebody who may be logging because they don't have another job option. Education for children and more are all community-led programs that are supported by Health and Harmony in Indonesian Borneo, the Brazilian Amazon, and the Manumbu rainforest in Madagascar. Something exciting about these intersectional solutions and this model of investing in rainforest communities is that it works. We had scientists did a 10-year study on our program site in Indonesian Borneo, where we've worked for 10 years at the time alongside rainforest communities. And they found that a $5 million investment in these solutions resulted in a 90% drop in illegal logging households, 67% drop in infant mortality rates, reduction in disease, and $65 million in carbon loss averted. So not only are intersectional solutions developed by rainforest communities effective and good for our planet, they're research supported too. And next, I know Brooke from our communications team has dropped in the chat some of our links to social media channels and website, or if she hasn't, those are coming. So please click and follow us on social media to learn more about what we're doing next, including the Rainforest Exchange technology platform, which is going to be a way for individuals and organizations across the globe to invest more money in community-driven solutions across the globe as well. And everybody's going to be able to join in the fight against climate change. So with that, I'm going to take it to our panel today. A couple other favorite plants from the chat. We got pothos plants and Mimosa pudica. That sounds really exciting, from the Netherlands. And so on that note, I'm going to turn the panel over and introduce our lovely panelists. Joining us today, we have Angela Ferguson, Tomeka Frieson, and Dr. Omnia El Omrani from our associate board here at Health and Harmony. So Tomeka, if you'd like to kick us off, I'd love you guys to introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, how you got in touch with or in contact with Health and Harmony, and what you're doing today in the climate change world.
Absolutely. Well, hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. My name is Tomeka Frieson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, but I'm currently based in Boston, Massachusetts. So I am very passionate about planetary health. I really started getting into this field more seriously, actually, with an internship with Health and Harmony in the summer of 2021, when I was working with the research team to organize and classify planetary health and human data to design the backbone of a dashboard that we're using to monitor the impact of Health and Harmony's international sites on promoting planetary health. I also am a student of public health, currently at the Boston University School of Public Health. Also very interested in medicine, global health, ecology and evolutionary biology. And so I take all of that with me into the planetary health space, and I'm just happy to be here and to be on this panel today.
Thank you, and we'll take it to Omnia.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm so excited to be with you today and to be also celebrating Earth Day. So I'm Omnia. I am from Cairo, Egypt, and I am a medical doctor. And I've been working on planetary health and climate change for the past 7 years. It started when I was a second-year medical student, and I was actually inspired when I started working and doing an internship in the US, actually in Miami. And back then there was Hurricane Irma, and it was the first time for me to see how a climate-related disaster can affect directly the health of the people, especially the most vulnerable. And since then, I started joining different local and global organizations of students, especially medical students, and together with them we started working both on integrating planetary health in our education to really prepare the health workforce to address the impacts of climate change as the first line responders, but at the same time influencing spaces like COPs, and afterwards as I was appointed as the youth envoy for the climate change conference that was hosted by Egypt, so COP27 for the first time. And I had the opportunity to then go to the biodiversity climate conference, which is COP15, where I was introduced to the inspirational work of Health and Harmony, and how really looking at the importance of listening to communities, co-leading with them solutions, and really how our health is dependent on the health of nature, biodiversity, and the planet, which sustains us. And now I'm working on mental health and climate change at Imperial College in London for the next year.
Thank you. And then we'll conclude with Angela.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you today. My name is Angela Ferguson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently a joint Master of Environmental Management and MBA student at Yale University here in New Haven, Connecticut. I grew up in Ohio here in the US, and then I was studying and working in Singapore for the past 7 years or so. During which time my full-time role was as a research analyst at a professional services firm, doing research and writing about how businesses can understand and manage climate risks. But during that time, when I was kind of taking this high-level perspective on climate change, I was also introduced to Health and Harmony's work through a radical listening training that I attended. And yeah, I was just so struck by Health and Harmony's leadership in really supporting interdisciplinary and community-led environmental solutions. And so have tried to stay in touch and support however I can since then. And right now, my studies are focused on the role of community engagement in a just energy transition.
Thank you. Well, everybody in the audience, you all are in for a treat with our wonderful panelists today. We do have some pre-prepared questions that we're about to jump into, but I did want to mention that if you are watching, feel free to add a question to the Q&A box. We will be answering audience questions towards the end of the webinar, and we'd love for you to engage with our wonderful panelists here today. Let's see, before we get started, couple other shouts out to Mangroves as well in the chat. So please continue interacting with us as we get started with this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in with our first question. How has growing up alongside climate change affected you? And we're going to invite Omnia, if you would not mind kicking us off with this question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, seeing climate change and understanding how urgent it is, but also looking at how it is an issue that affects our health, both our physical and our mental health. As a young person, I understand that I am disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change. As, for example, just last month, the IPCC report showed that and proved that young people are going to witness the global increase in temperature that our grandparents have witnessed throughout their whole lifetime, which shows how this is an intergenerational injustice issue. And at the same time, I was so inspired while I was working with young people and diverse youth-led organizations and groups, and seeing how we are not victims to the climate crisis, but we are actually taking the lead with determination, with commitment, with optimism, that we are able to change the narrative. We are able to build together a better and a healthier world, not just for our generations, but also for the communities that are most impacted, that are least represented. Because as young people, whether we are in our universities or schools or in our own organizations, we always work at the front line with our communities. And then we also have that credibility and the determination to take these needs and these perspectives, but also the challenges and the solutions directly to the policymakers and the key actors, and really force them not to backtrack on their targets and their promises, and to really seek justice for our countries, our people, and our planet. And this is kind of what inspired me as a medical doctor to take the time and to work on climate change, because I see that as the most and the biggest health emergency that I have a responsibility to respond to.
Thank you. Tomeka, would you like to chime in your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Omnia. That is so important, and I completely agree with you. And I think at first, when I learned about climate change at a really young age, I really only heard about it through the lens of like ice caps melting or polar bears losing their homes or then species becoming endangered and then extinct. And while those things are really important, that was really the extent of it. And then as I grew up and started looking around my own communities, I realized that the effects of climate change were really and truly evident in some everyday things that all of us experienced, like what used to be very cold winters only turning into mild winters, or the birds migrating earlier in the season than they usually do. And then as I learned even more and started exploring humans' impacts on the world and each other through, disciplines like anthropology and ecology and public health and medicine, I really started to realize that humankind and capitalism and greed and the little ways that we treat and take care of our planet in everyday life really all add up to the tropical rainforest destruction and the climate crisis that we see around us. And so really for me, the theory of the problem really shifted from just the climate and what's going on with the climate to humans' impact on the climate and how our actions are contributing to climate change. And so, that's really interested me, and I just kept learning more and really started understanding that human health and climate health are really interconnected. And I mean, that's what drew me to Health and Harmony as an organization, because they get that. And then with this understanding of this interconnectedness between us as human beings and also the world around us, my view of the importance and the urgency of addressing the climate crisis really just shifted from one of trying to understand how to prevent climate change to actively working to promote planetary health, which offers a more interdisciplinary and solutions-oriented approach to protecting the planet. So, I mean, the urgency of protecting our planet is not just to prevent any further melting of the ice caps, but also to save our homes, save the literal lives of animals and like plants and all species on this planet, and really just to protect the health of ourselves as humans. And so really everything is just influencing one another. And every time we influence something negatively or positively, it influences everything else. So that's how my understanding has changed over time.
Well said, Tomeka. It's so true. It ultimately breaks down to such small actions we take or don't take every day can have such humongous impacts over time. Thank you. And Angela, same question to you, please.
Thank you. Yeah, Omni, I really appreciated you articulating how you think about the role of young people in this moment, and Tomeka, your articulation as well of how climate change is not just this narrative we might have learned when we were younger about polar bears, but it really has so many human impacts as well. I think for me, growing up in Ohio, I could definitely see the climate shifting over time, even from when I was younger. There are songs about having a white Christmas, and the fact is I just haven't really had a white Christmas in many years now. And on the flip side, summers have become hotter and drier, and Ohio is a big agricultural state, so these shifts in the climate really impact farmers, but honestly, like everybody who eats food is impacted as well. And I think more recently, when I was living and working in Singapore, I think that's when the health impacts of climate change were really hit home for me, because, I was volunteering for some of the time as an outdoor educator with young children, and, to just feel so viscerally, actually, the heat stress that can make you feel physically unwell, especially in the humidity. I've heard from talking with people that, places like Singapore didn't used to feel this hot or this humid. It really has been a change in recent years. And, as it becomes warmer and wetter, these are ideal conditions for the mosquitoes that carry the dengue virus. And so, when I was living in Singapore, we had record outbreaks. It seemed like each year was setting a new record for the number of cases. And so there were many times I would come out of my apartment and see posters in my building showing the number of cases in my neighborhood. A dear friend of mine was recently hospitalized with dengue. And so I think all of this is just to say, in these very different places that I've had the fortune to live, both in Ohio and Singapore, like every place is affected by climate change already, even if those impacts look very different from place to place. And I guess zooming out a little bit, all of these impacts that, the three of us have talked about, I think for me personally, it's led to a lot of uncertainty and concern. When I think about the future, I think, past generations have often been confident that, subsequent generations will have a higher quality of life. And with the kind of intersecting environmental and social crises that we face today, it just feels harder to say that, that we can necessarily expect life to just keep getting better when the climate crisis is shifting the fundamental building blocks of life that we all depend on. And so, I'm fundamentally hopeful moving forward. But I think at the least, it just means that we can't take it for granted that things will just improve for the next generation. We have to make it so.
Well said. Thank you, all three of you. Some great observations there. We're going to move on to our next question and then take a couple questions from the chat. Just a reminder, if you're just joining us, you can drop audience questions in the Q&A box. But we're going to go ahead and move on for now. So you all have shared great observations on how growing up alongside climate change has affected you. When did you know that you wanted to do more and actually work toward healing the planet in your professional life? Was there a key moment, or how did that realization hit you? We'll take this, we will let Tomeka go first this time.
Yeah, so I think there was a key moment for me. I previously spent some time studying Indigenous film and learning from Indigenous filmmakers and working within Indigenous villages to support health through Ecuador and Argentina. And through those experiences, I was taught the concepts of sumak kausai in Quechua, meaning good living or just being in balance, both in community and also with nature. And so through that, I just developed a more refined understanding of Pachamama and the principles of reciprocity, and that if we're receiving from the earth, we also should be giving in return. And so with those understandings, I took the disciplines that I was studying in school, and then just the wisdom I've learned from others, and then just really worked to understand how I could further that by promoting planetary health and healing our planet. So, yeah.
Wonderful, and such a good reference to some of the Indigenous principles of well living in our Brazilian Amazon communities where we work. We often hear it as bem viver, and it's so cool to see those global principles guiding work. Thank you. Angela, how about you?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's harder to point to a specific moment. It's felt more of like a series of moments. But I know that one experience that really helped pull me into the climate world was reading a book called This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein. And this book just really helped me understand that actually environmental issues are not separate from social issues. They are fundamentally interconnected because communities that are already minoritized or marginalized are the ones most harmed by climate change and other forms of environmental degradation. And so I think this just helped, give me clarity in the sense that actually by taking climate action, I am also in a way helping to take action on all of these other social issues that I care about. And it really felt like once I started to see these connections, I couldn't unsee them. You start to see patterns like the fact that, in Singapore, like those that are most at risk of heat stress are often lower income communities, such as migrant workers who work in outdoor construction, or maybe elderly folks who might not be able to afford air conditioning when it becomes really hot and humid. And so I think, really, once I started to see those patterns, I couldn't unsee them. And I think another thing that's been helpful for me to realize over time is that, even for those of us who don't work in outdoor occupations, life might feel increasingly digital, but we're still physical bodies who live in specific places. And so because of that, everything that we depend on and hold dear still depends on a stable environment. And I think this realization was really crystallized for me when I was volunteering with a group that helps to facilitate conversations about climate change in people's homes. We would do this exercise where people would share what matters most to them in life. And then we would physically draw out how each of those things might be impacted by climate change. So people would say, I really care about my loved ones, health, food, education, faith, whatever it is. it was just so striking to see that people fundamentally mostly care about the same things. And actually all of those things are likely to be harmed by climate change.
Such a good exercise. Thank you. Omnia, would you like to share?
Yeah, I'm first of all so inspired by both Tomeka's and Angela's stories, and it's so beautiful to see that really looking into Indigenous knowledge and wisdom, but at the same time having that knowledge sharing spaces and learning from the stories of others is so inspiring. For me, it was very similar because when I went to my very first conference, like it was a very like the climate conference, which is a very political space. But then I saw that I was not just the only medical student there. I was joined by doctors, nurses, and public health practitioners, all really working together. We were only 10 people, and we were really looking at how can we put in health at the center of the climate negotiations to really bring in urgency and justice to this process. And then over the years, I saw how from being only 10 people, and this was in COP24 in Poland, to being over 100 health professionals in COP26 in the UK, and in Egypt, we were over 200 people representing the health community in that specific space. And I was also very inspired to see that when I was reflecting back at my own education and seeing that it was so missing, even though it makes most sense that the doctors and the healthcare professionals who are automatically seen as the trusted messengers, they do not learn about climate change nor see how relevant it is, even though we don't just have a responsibility towards our patients, we also have a responsibility towards our community's health, which is dependent on the health of the planet. And then working with medical students from over 130 countries to bring in a global call at all our universities to integrate planetary health and climate change in our education really motivated me to then, as soon as I finished medical school, to really focus on that and place planetary health and climate change as my career. Which can be very untraditional to someone who finishes medical school, but I feel like it made most sense to be on this dedicated, challenging, but always very inspiring journey.
Wonderful. What I keep hearing from all of your wonderful answers is that when you look at the world through a planetary health lens, where all of these different sectors play into the well-being of the planet and of everybody in it, no matter what your current professional sector is, you can find a way to make an impact on climate change. So thank you all. We do have 3 questions from the chat, so I'm going to jump into those now. Our first question says, you all are powerful activists for our planet, domestically and internationally. What is your honest opinion of the most critical barriers that exist today between you and the achievement of your climate activist goals? So if one of you would like to unmute and take that question first, looks like Omnia may be ready to chat.
Yeah, I always like the question about barriers.
Yes.
Because I think, especially as a young person, there is always the barrier of being put in tokenistic situations where you are not seen as a person or as an expert in your field, but then rather than a young climate activist who just is not about solutions or not being seen as equal and natural stakeholders to any policy or planning or implementation that is being done either by governments, by organizations, or the private sector, for example. But what I'm seeing right now is a radical shift in how young people or young experts are integrated in either decision-making spaces or having, right now we're all part of an associate board that serves a very powerful organization, which is Health in Harmony, and it is very meaningful because we get the opportunity to speak with the experts, with the mentors, but also in a way co-create solutions and ideas and projects together. And this is a perfect example of how things should be and how to really tackle that tokenistic barrier that many of us face, not because of our experience or understanding, but only because of how young we are.
Thank you. Tomeka, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think going off of that, and I really appreciate Omnia's answer, really just working across sectors, across generations with open minds and hearts, because I think it's so easy to be siloed in the group that you're a part of, in the company, in the organization, and it really does require this interconnected lens. I think part of my answer also involves people who are currently in positions of power, making way, or even in some cases stepping down in order to make way for Indigenous people and local communities and others who really understand what's going on the ground and who are most effective to lead the
Oh, wasn't sure if that was my internet or Tomeka's, but we may have lost her. Well, we hope Tomeka joined us, but Angela, if you'd like to take over that question. There's always that moment when everyone pauses to see if their computer was the one. We hope
Right.
Tomeka can do this.
Well, I don't have much to add to Omni and Tomeka's answer. Yeah, I think environmental solutions or environmental problems must be met with interdisciplinary and community-led solutions. And so I think what Tomeka was maybe finishing explaining was, yeah, the need for actual decision-making power to shift to the communities who are on the front lines and who know best the solutions for their specific places.
Absolutely. And going off to our next question, which is a nice follow-up. In your experience, what are those of us who are climate activists aged in the 50+ range getting right in our regard for the role of youth climate and climate activism? And in your experience, what are we getting wrong? And do you have advice? I think we can summarize this one, but feel free to take. We summarized a lot of maybe what's going wrong very astutely, but if you have advice to add, feel free.
Yeah, I can share a bit about this because I was recently in a conference in Bangkok and it was about planetary health and climate change, a conference that has actors that are coming from global organizations, directors focusing on health financing, as well as philanthropic organizations. And they decided for the first time, this conference was done for 27 years. And for the first time, they wanted to dedicate a youth-led session where we were leading the session and we were leading the small working group discussions. And they were actually, thinking together with us how to better work with young climate experts like ourselves. And it was a very inspiring experience because it was a way to shift roles and it was a way that was intergenerational and meaningful and outcome oriented. We also did the same as the COP27 presidency, where we held 2 roundtable discussions at COP. We invited the climate negotiators, the ministers, and the chairs of the country groups, and the young experts from adaptation and mitigation. And during these roundtables, we gave the young experts the floor first to speak and to share their policy actions and recommendations. And then the negotiators would respond to the demands of young people. And I think this was also very interesting because it gave the space for young people to speak first and then to create a dialogue where then the key actors, or I wouldn't like to say the older people, can respond, but I feel like just having this sense of true co-leadership and understanding and listening to young people is so important before creating these different spaces or structures for young people. It's important to consult them first from the very preliminary planning process until the final implementation and evaluation, because we need to ask ourselves, did we work with young people in the way that they expected? Did they benefit from it? And really ask them for feedback on how we can do this better and work better with young people.
Thank you. Angela?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Omnia shared, and would just add two other quick points. I think, yeah, young people bring a lot of moral vision and moral leadership to confronting environmental problems. Something that we might not always have is, information on the lay of the land. Sometimes, for example, when a young person enters a new workplace, they might not know actually who are the key decision makers overseeing a company's environmental performance. What are the processes for how things get done here? I think, older people can play a really vital role in kind of equipping younger people with advice on how to understand the lay of the land and build strategy from there. And my other point is just that, most wealth still lies with folks who are above 50. And so I think that's another really important role that older folks can play is, using their wealth to support the causes that they believe in.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have another question from the chat that I'm going to jump to. This is from Selena. The last two were anonymous. So this question says, I will soon finish medical school in Switzerland, and I love everything about planetary health. Do you have any suggestions or resources where I could learn more about it? Or do you know a place or institution where I could do an internship or work? Now, I will start that question off by saying that Health in Harmony does offer internships. We have former interns in our associate board, as you've learned, as well as some of our employees are former interns as well. So please do visit our website, www.healthinharmony.org. All of our social channels have been plugged in the chat as well, and follow along with us. But I will turn it over to our associate board for other resources for learning about planetary health. Angela, would you like to start this question off?
Honestly, Health in Harmony has been my entryway into learning about the planetary health world. So I wouldn't have more to add beyond what Annalise shared.
And I'll add, as a staff member, Health in Harmony was also my introduction to planetary health as well. We're at a really exciting time in this term where it's pretty new. But Tomeka or Omnia, if you'd like to unmute, if you have any resources to share.
Yeah, I'll add. Oh, do you want to go, Omnia?
No, please, Tomeka, take the floor.
Okay. Also, apologies. My computer decided to glitch earlier. I'm glad I'm with you too. But I would think definitely Health in Harmony is a really great gateway, but really just starting to look up various planetary health organizations, like just Googling planetary health and whatever you're interested in. I think it's a great way to understand what is already out there, what people are already doing work in the field or fields that you're interested in. And then if there's not someone already doing the work, maybe you should look into that and see if you can take what you are already connected with planetary health and taking some organizations that might work with your other fields of interest and seeing if there are ways to connect those together.
Great answer. Omnia?
Yeah, I was just going to add, because you said you're a medical student. So my previous organization, which is the International Federation of Medical Students, they have like SWIMSA, which is the Swiss local version of my organization. Like, part of it has been incredibly active on climate change. So I would highly recommend checking them out as well. And there's also like the Planetary Health Alliance. They have a European arm, and they're also amazing to check out.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have one more question from the Q&A, and it is for Dr. El Omrani. Can you talk to us about your experience as a youth envoy for the COP27 Egypt presidency? Did you gain any insights into the behind the scenes negotiations between countries that give you hope or optimism? And I'm going to ask if we can maybe keep it to 1 to 2, Omnia, since we're running short on time, and then we'll.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's been a very exceptional experience. And just seeing how, for the first time, there's a young representative in the presidency team, which facilitates the negotiation process. What was inspiring that I had the opportunity to see young climate negotiators in over 30 countries that were negotiating on behalf of their countries. So they had access to really changing how countries are developing their strategies and their commitments, but at the same time reflecting the perspectives of young people, which gave me a lot of hope. I can also share with you a commentary we did that really shared the different youth milestones we had this COP, and how young people were integrated meaningfully. And then seeing that for COP28, there's also a youth envoy from the UAE, who's the Minister of Community Development. So yeah, so it's only a start of further meaningful youth engagement.
Excellent. And thank you so much to everyone with us today for your insightful questions and staying engaged with our panelists. We're going to wrap it up today with our final question for the three of you. How can somebody support planetary health beyond Earth Day? And I would love to turn that question over to Tomeka if you have suggestions.
Yeah, I would say on an individual level, understand what climate action and activism is happening locally in your communities and start getting involved there. And also, as we've touched on earlier, just making space for different voices and faces of what planetary health and environmental health movements can look like, because it really does, just working to address this pressing issue really does require us to use our imaginations and envision the best possible world where both Earth and humans and everything in it can live symbiotically with one another. And then I think just in addition to that, thinking back to that spirit of reciprocity and just really understanding that we are from the Earth. And so we really need to take care of the Earth because that's all we've got. So we really need to take care of her.
Absolutely. Angela?
Beautiful words from Tomeka. Yeah, I would say that, while it can be overwhelming to think about how environmental destruction harms everything that we depend on, I think we can also reframe that in the sense that climate action and environmental action is thus a way to protect all that we love and all that we care about. And so, yeah, I would agree with what Tomeka shared, figure out what particular issues speak to you. I think it's important to pay attention to how you feel when you see or hear about different types of environmental destruction, because like those emotions, even if they're negative, sadness, anger, grief, like those emotions are important sources of information. They tell you that something is not right and that you care deeply. And so, yeah, follow your intuition and explore, how you can plug your strengths into the environmental movement, because whatever they are, we need them.
Well said. And Omnia, what would you add?
Yeah, thank you to Tomeka and Angela for this. I would only add, working on climate change and planetary health is something that you can integrate in any aspect of your life, whether in your curriculum or education, whether with your friends and with your colleagues, creating your own awareness campaigns, or even through social media. There's so much that can be done, but also do not fear going up to your governments and to your institutions and really influencing them to act on climate change, because this is our right to a healthy planet. We have a UN resolution that proves that, but we also have the science to support our calls to action. And we need to be, very determined and also positive and optimistic, because we are a force as young people, as we have proven in just a couple of years how much we can change. So there's so much, and it's also a space where you can be very creative in your demands and in the way that you demand demanded. And it's important to really connect with and truly represent those who are most affected and work together to find solutions with optimism and really strong commitment. And we are here for you, we support you, and we're also available if you have any ideas or questions for us that we can help you with.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And thank you to everybody attending today's webinar. That's all the time we have, but just want to end with a couple reminders. If you enjoyed today's webinar, you can get more involved with Health and Harmony today. We are a nonprofit, so please visit our website, healthandharmony.org, for all the ways you can get involved, including donating to support our mission to bring the planetary health vision to more people at healthandharmony.org/donate. We also have monthly radical listening webinars where you can learn more about the radical listening methodology and how you can implement this radical listening way of thinking and approaching issues in your community. Those are available for free at our website as well. So once again, thank you for everybody for attending, and to Omnia, Tomeka, and Angela from our associate board. We so appreciate your voice in this fight for planetary health. And we hope that all of you have a wonderful day, and this is not the last time we see you at one of our events. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.